I'm standing in front of one of the most recognizable buildings in the world, the Vatican in Rome. A place of immense power and influence, and also incredible stories, like the one of Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty, the Irish priest who risked his own life to save thousands of others. The ancient city of Rome, home to almost 3 million people and also welcomes 10 million visitors each year. With its incredible architecture and structures going back 2,000 years, the city is steeped in history. And at the center of Rome is the Vatican, one of the city's top attractions for tourists and pilgrims from all over the world. And today, inside a church within Vatican City, a special mass has been celebrated by former Archbishop of Dublin, Diarmuid Martin. In attendance are members of the Irish community, celebrating Mass in the same church where 80 years ago, an Irish priest called Hugh O'Flaherty used to say Mass.
Here in the Vatican.
Afterwards, the Irish ambassador to the Holy See, Francis Collins, launches a special booklet about this Kerry man's life and the extraordinary things he achieved here at the Vatican, now on the 60th anniversary of his death.
I recall what Pope Francis said, that there are those who defeat evil with good, and Monsignor O'Flaherty is certainly one of those people. He saved thousands of Jews, prisoners of war during Nazi-occupied Rome, and serves as an example, I think, to us all, but also in telling his story. We also tell the stories of others, including Irish religious in Rome who provided refuge to countless Jews and families during a most difficult time in the history of this city.
In the audience is Father Enda Murphy from Derry Lynn in County Fermanagh. He works here at the Vatican, and outside tells me about Hugh O'Flaherty's role here at the Vatican as a young man in the 1930s and 40s.
Well, his role here, he was an official at the congregation, or the sacred congregation as it then was, of the doctrine of the faith. So his job would have involved helping to look at, study various questions to do with the doctrine of the Church, and through the superiors there advising the Pope, who at the time, of course, was Pope Pius XII.
Father O'Flaherty became Monsignor O'Flaherty and was working at one of the most important and powerful departments at the Vatican. And he'd also worked as a Vatican diplomat for several years in different parts of the world, like Egypt, Haiti and Czechoslovakia.
Well, it was obviously seen that he had the talent and the gifts to do the job. The Vatican Diplomatic Corps is one of the oldest diplomatic services in the world, so they're the Holy See's representatives to governments and states around the world. And I think, Colm, it's important to remember what Rome was like at the time.
In September 1943, during World War II, the Nazis took over Rome and controlled the city. It was an incredibly tense and dangerous time, especially for the 12,000 Jews living in Rome. Hitler wanted to include them in his final solution, and in just a few days, more than 1,000 Jews were rounded up in the city and sent to Auschwitz. Thousands more prisoners of war were also on the run, and the Irish Monsignor O'Flaherty knew he had to do something to help.
In all of this, O'Flaherty was at work in a city in terror, the people besieged, locked into their homes. So he must have had great courage to live under that sort of pressure and to do what he did.
He came up with a plan called the Organisation, where he would hide in secret thousands of Jews and prisoners of war from the Nazis in different homes, religious houses around Rome, and inside the Vatican itself. The Nazis knew exactly what he was doing, but couldn't touch him as long as he remained within the perimeter of Vatican City, an independent and neutral state. Father, this is the actual line, still today, that divides the state of Italy and the state of Vatican City, the Holy See.
That's right. If you put your foot this side, you're in the Vatican, and this side, you're in the Republic of Italy.
Half and half.
So obviously, Monsignor O'Flaherty, he used to meet people who were coming for help up on the steps of the Basilica.
And during those crucial months, Monsignor O'Flaherty was organising this incredible rescue operation from where he was living inside the Vatican itself. Our cameras have been permitted inside the walls of Vatican City, permission that is rarely granted, and close to the stunning Vatican Gardens, a building called Campo Santo. We hear the bells ringing behind us of St. Peter's Basilica.
Yes, all 15 minutes.
Every 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Father Stefan Hyde is from Germany and is the historian here at Campo Santo and has been studying the life of Monsignor O'Flaherty for a decade. Father Stefan, we're inside Campo Santo. Tell me, what is Campo Santo here in the Vatican?
The Campo Santo is a German house, a German priest college, and it is on a cemetery. So it's a combination between House of the Dead and House of the Living, so as to say.
This is where Monsignor O'Flaherty was living at the time, ironically in a German college within the Vatican.
German soldiers outside, inside the Vatican State, the Vatican guards, of course, the Swiss guard. And so it was here surrounded by police and military.
So a heightened tension must have been in the air with the guards
On the one
there.
hand side, yes. On the other hand side, it was very secure here. Under Pius XII, the Vatican was absolutely neutral. And so the Germans had not the courage to come in and risk a major conflict. And O'Flaherty, as an Irish priest, could remain inside here because Ireland was neutral in the Second World War.
Pope Pius XII was the Pope at the time, and historians have debated for years how much he helped or didn't help the Jewish community during World War II. Many point to the fact that he never publicly denounced Hitler and the Nazi regime, but others say that he was trying to protect the thousands of priests and nuns throughout Europe from persecution, and instead allowed them to help the Jewish community quietly and clandestinely. For example, Monsignor O'Flaherty was allowed to operate his rescue operation from right here in the centre of the Vatican. He was given a quiet room in this courtyard, close to the Basilica and the Papal Palace.
And you see, this is the last corner of the whole compound, so nobody could see him or know when he's coming, going. And you have the nice trees, so it's all hidden and so on. He had one of those, in those times, 3 rooms, only 3, and one of the 3 he had.
It was from this very place where we're standing that Monsignor O'Flaherty is credited with saving the lives of over 6,500 people by using his vast network of contacts to offer hiding places throughout Rome and beyond.
The name was simply organization. He had many friends, helpers, and a team, a whole team which organized about 200 safe rooms, safe houses in the city. Most fascinating aspect is that an Irish priest in a German college saved so many people from the Germans.
It's a bit embarrassing for the German college, is it?
Yes and no. It's the Germans. This was their way to help, simply to be quiet and let him do what he had to do.
The Vatican Archives are some of the most secretive in the world, and Father Stefan has been examining them. Are there any documents in the archives that have been discovered about Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty and what he was doing? Are there any records somewhere deep in the libraries?
What we have is we have a list of the persons hidden here in the house. The thing we have is the Mass book, the Mass documentation, so the celebration book.
But there's no documents talking about the work he was doing, even in kind of a roundabout way? Or...
No.
The Pope was so close to where he was organizing everything. How much did the Pope know or not know, do you think?
The Pope certainly knew nearly everything. The Pope told the rector here, Stöckle, to take some people which were in risk.
Monsignor O'Flaherty would risk his own life by sneaking out of the Vatican at night and therefore leaving the neutral territory. He would meet fleeing Jews and bring them back to the Vatican, even dressing some of them as priests and nuns to get past the German soldiers and the Swiss guards. But it's important to point out that although O'Flaherty is well known because of how many people he saved, he wasn't the only one helping the Jewish community during this horrific time. There were other Irish religious in Rome who did the exact same, but are rarely talked about. At the Church of San Clemente in Rome are the Irish Dominicans.
Well, here we are in the 12th century Basilica of San Clemente, one of the most extraordinary buildings in the world. The Irish Dominicans, we've been here since 1677. Of course, refugees from Ireland, from the persecution, Cromwellian persecution in Ireland. And it's amazing to think then that during the Second World War, we were able to give hospitality to refugees, who were escaping from the persecution of fascism.
Father Paul Lawler is from Tralee in County Kerry and is the prior here at the monastery and is bringing me up to the very top floor.
And, these are various Irish Dominicans who are really very much part of Irish history.
So this is the top floor?
And this was added in 1400. The building itself is 12th century. It's such an old structure, that we're still living in buildings that were built in the 12th century.
Wow, isn't that amazing? Still standing strong.
Still living. Well, this is the corridor where students lived coming out from Ireland, and indeed still live here. They come out from Ireland to study theology. But during the war, there were no students coming out, and this corridor was empty. The Jews were being rounded up, and as we know now, being brought to extermination camps. And Pope Pius XII asked religious houses and institutions to take them in.
The Irish Dominicans were just one of the religious groups who answered that call.
San Clemente brought in 5 that lived in this corridor. So they lived here during the day and went down to the garden at night time.
Why was it, do you think, that the Irish Dominicans and various Irish religious orders took in these people at such a dangerous time?
They weren't dominated by the fascist theory, which took over the minds of so many people. They were good people. They saw people in trouble and they went to help them. Some of them went to Israel afterwards and wrote back to thank and say, they would never forget the hospitality of the Irish Dominicans. Really something we can take pride in, that we could reach out to these people who were in such danger when life was so difficult.
It is a source of pride for the community here in Rome, but also back in Ireland and in County Kerry, where Monsignor O'Flaherty grew up and went to school. This is the school he went to, the Presentation Monastery Primary School. This is the old building, but the school has since moved across the road to a new home. And inside, the memory of their past pupil lives on, where the students learn about his story, and one even has a special connection to him, the grandson of one of Monsignor O'Flaherty's good friends, who gifted him a special cross.
This is a cross that Hugh O'Flaherty, my granddad Jimmy Toomey was like a great friend of his, and Hugh O'Flaherty gave a couple of crosses to to a few of his friends, and my granddad got one.
And what do you think of, Adam, when you think of Monsignor O'Flaherty and everything he did?
I think of the amount of lives he saved. My uncle would tell me what he was like, and he was a very shy person. But he'd never talk about what he did in World War II. He'd just be very shy kind of about it. It's nice to have that kind of person from Kerry and have a good kind of relation to him in your family.
What have you learned from his story?
I learned just be nice to everyone. It doesn't matter who they are, if they're different religion or anything. If someone needs your help, just give it to them.
I suppose we like to have his picture up around in different places around the school.
Mary Brosnan is the principal of the school.
The murals were painted by a local artist, and the boys contributed as well, each boy in the school at the time. We would tell the story of Hugh O'Flaherty's life in school, and say he was born in North Cork and then moved to Kilgarvan, and then his family moved to Killarney, and his dad was a greenkeeper. So it's still really tangible for them to understand his life, and they're able to relate to it better. It's such a huge thing for them to, I suppose, take in, that a man who achieved so much in his lifetime and helped so many people, that they see that he attended the same school as them, and therefore I suppose it's something that is within their reach to achieve.
Here it says September 13th, Flaherty Hugh. I think it's amazing because nobody would have known what he was going to do, but he did so many great things during the war. I think it amazed me that he risked his life so many times to save so many people from just completely risking his life when he didn't have to.
And close to the school is a monument to the local hero, erected by the Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty Memorial Society in 2013.
He was 6'2", 6'3". The sculptor tells us he always goes slightly larger than real life.
And this is meant to be depicting him kind of striding through St. Peter's Square.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
This is how he was remembered by the likes of Lieutenant Colonel Sam Derry, striding across the St. Peter's Square.
Jerry O'Grady is one of the founders of the Memorial Society.
It was founded in 2008, following the publication of Brian Fleming's book, The Vatican Pimpernel. It just really kick-started the whole idea that Killarney should celebrate this particular individual. And he had a mission, obviously, through his life, and so it is appropriate that he should be on Mission Road as well.
What has amazed you the most about his life and his story as you've learned more about it over the years?
I suppose two things. First of all, that so few people know about him in Ireland, but yet in Rome, he's still well remembered.
What do you think people should remember about Monsignor O'Flaherty?
I think, as the message on the wall says behind us here, his motto was that God has no country. It doesn't really matter what your creed, what your colour, what your national identity is, what your politics are. If you require assistance, then you should get it. And I suppose in today's world, that's more apt than ever.
Outside Rome, wrecked tanks are not seen dead as the Yanks move in. Rome itself is almost without a scar, but where the German resists, he is slaughtered.
When Rome was liberated by US forces in June of 1944, there were celebrations in the streets. Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty had survived, and helped thousands of others to survive as well. He continued his work at the Vatican, and even went on to befriend Herbert Kappler, the Gestapo colonel who had tried so hard to capture him. And in an incredible twist to the story, Kappler converted to Catholicism in 1949 and was baptized by Monsignor O'Flaherty. A recent visit by President Michael D. Higgins to the Vatican to meet Pope Francis saw him stop by the plaque of Monsignor O'Flaherty at Campo Santo, where he laid a wreath and spoke of his bravery.
And it is interesting that you will have a connection where he is deeply loved in his native Kerry.
President Higgins, when you think of the life and legacy of Monsignor O'Flaherty, what strikes you?
What strikes me very much is, I think, how clever he was, because certainly the atmosphere of the time meant that he took considerable risks, even with those who were very close to him. So looking after those that he offered shelter to, effectively close to in the vicinity of his own office, was highly risky, and it took great courage, it took great commitment. And as I said, it was morally so striking that somebody was going to do all of that for those threatened.
And on the plaque paying tribute to O'Flaherty in the Vatican, it states he died in 1963 and is buried not here among the Vatican powerful, but instead he's buried back in Cahersiveen. For this is where his sister lived, who cared for him in his final years, and where his niece Pearl still lives today.
When he came to Cahersiveen, he requested he'd be buried in Cahersiveen because he came to be minded by his sister, and that arrangement was there always.
What do you think when you think of him and what he did, his legacy?
I think he was a mighty man, and he was a fantastic uncle. He had fierce interest in everything we ever did.
What was he like as a person?
Strict.
Strict?
Do you notice he's such a big heart, he always had the interest of the person there, that at the moment, no matter what the crisis was. He dealt with it, and he tried to make the thing easier.
Are you proud?
I am. I'm very proud. You know, all you can say is he did his best.
Hugh O'Flaherty was only 65 when he died, but his legacy truly lives on.
As a person, I think his legacy challenges us all to think on an individual level. How do we respond to those in need of refuge and sanctuary?
He had no fear. He was special. I mean, for him, everything was possible.
Well, we were always intrigued by Monsignor O'Flaherty. When I came here first, way back in the 1970s, there were many people around Rome, priests and bishops, who remembered him, you know, and they were all fascinated by this figure, you know, who'd lived such a brave and did such a courageous action, and helping people, all who were in difficulty, and not just during the war, but even after the war. I mean, he was an extraordinary person.
I think the lesson is that, like, you should always think about other people and not just be you. It's okay to be scared, but you should always try to help other people when you can.
60 years after his death, the incredible memory and legacy of Hugh O'Flaherty lives on, and not just at home in County Kerry, but as you've seen, also here at the Vatican in Rome, where we remember the remarkable courage and kindness that he showed to so many people at a time of such suffering and pain. Someone we can all be proud of. Well, until next time, thank you so much for watching this program, and good night from Rome.